Good morning and welcome to our show, Real Time Los Angeles. I'm your host, Jordan Katz, and here with me are UCLA students Alex Morris and Benton Stilwell. Guys, how you doing?
Doing well, thanks for having us, Jordan.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be talking about the history of incarceration in our fair city of Los Angeles. A few topics we'll go over are settler society, social institutions, and the penal system. Guys, how would we start off with talking about the effects of the settler society and how they have lasted throughout history and still linger today?
Well, Jordan, let me start off by first saying settler society is a major ideological movement that was seen throughout the entire world in terms of colonialism, but really became prevalent in our state, in Los Angeles, specifically in the 1800s. Major events like the gold rush, just major population shifts, bringing people over here. The movement as a whole really is a pretty brutal movement. It's taking the minorities of populations, really marginalizing them, exploiting them, and spitting them out for the benefit of, the majority population, sort of that white settler middle class ideal. Major groups that are affected by it, Native Americans, huge exploitation, basically just really eliminating them from the public eye in our own society, whether it be reservations, exploitation of labor, things like that. And then, even tramps, some of the same racial groups as a lot of the settler society are marginalized just on a socioeconomic basis. The tramps moved to find work, and once they came to Los Angeles area and stuff like that, they were almost punished for seeking this work and not necessarily fitting into society, to a T. So, as a whole, it's just a system, cyclical, just marginalizing major amounts of people who don't fit into the norm of society, if you will.
And to add on to what you were saying, Ben, in terms of the period of the Chinese immigration, there was things such as the Reign of Terror and the Litany of Hate that existed in Los Angeles, where it was a movement to get rid of the Chinese and culminating into the Chinese Massacre of 1871. And then also the Geary Act of 1982 that required Chinese laborers to prove their legal status by procuring a certificate of residency. And this created a chain of events that created an immigration system that was very similar to the ways that we incarcerate people. Instead of labeling immigration as a crime, they were detained, not technically imprisoned, but it was the same concept of the settler society by getting them out of the norm because they didn't fit the white settler kind of normal person that you would assume is going to be living in Los Angeles. So the Chinese were really targeted during this era. And some of those effects of immigration detention still exist today with Mexican immigration and other immigrants from other countries.
Absolutely, this problem isn't solved.
Thank you for that, Alex. Now, let's talk about how social institutions influence our society today and how they influence other societies.
All right, well, social institution as a whole is a shared set of beliefs that often cover up contradictions within our own society. For the purpose of this show, the main one to focus on is, the penal system as a whole, and its litany of problems and issues that come along with it. I know, Morris, you have some specific examples in the topic.
Yeah, exactly. It's jails and prisons. Their purpose is to rehabilitate members of our society. So if someone commits a crime, then the idea is that you rehabilitate that person, give them services, programs, and things like that, so that they can get back on their feet when they return to our society. This is something that we're really not seeing in our society today. It's more of a cycle. People are getting in jail more and more often, and they're not getting rehabilitated.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at legislation like the 3 strikes penalty, it's, if you expect them to be fixed in their time in prison, then why would you expect them to, commit the same mistakes 3 times in a row and then get rid of, remove them from society to good? It's just a major flaw in reasoning, and obviously the jail serves a different purpose than it's intended for.
Right? Exactly. And there's very big discrepancies between sentencing too.
Mm-hmm.
You have drug legislation that has sentences a lot higher for people that get caught with crack rather than cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
So even that too affects your rehabilitation process. People are in prison for longer for really no reason.
Absolutely. It's a shame.
Guys, that made a lot of sense. Now let's talk about the possible solutions to alleviating the effects of the settler society moving forward and looking on to the future.
So there's a lot of possible solutions that we can look into, but first I just want to start off by painting the picture of where we're at right now, Jordan. The prison population has quadrupled since 1980, and 12 million people cycle through jails each year, and the U.S. is by far has the highest incarceration rate than any other country in the entire world. So right now we're not going in a good direction. And this is the time where we really need to look for different solutions and other things that can solve this problem rather than just building more jails, building more prisons, and really getting more people incarcerated. That's not the solution, and we got to look into other ways to deal with these people.
Morris, even in our own city of Los Angeles, we have a $3 billion prison plan coming up, with even more prisons expanding around California in general as well. And just with this trend continuing to grow, what possible options do we have to move away from this?
I mean, really two that we studied during this class is abolition versus reform. So either abolition, completely outright stopping incarceration, or reform, where we actually look into rehabilitation programs, services, things that we went on field trips for to really delve into solving this problem. I mean, what are your opinions on that, Ben?
Well, I think with reformation, it's the more attainable of the two, but with a system this broken, even fixing it, you're going to have some of the negative aspects of it linger through. But just in the time being, with that, like a radical shift in the culture of America and how we view the incarceral system, reformation seems like the only way for me to get this done right now. And it's not perfect, but you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. And any progress is great progress with this huge problem.
Welcome back. Now let's talk about settler colonialism ideology. Is it inherently racist, and is it why blacks and Hispanics have the highest incarceration rate?
I'm going to go off and say that it's not inherently racist, but it does tend to target minorities for the most part, especially people that, like we've suggested before, that don't fit into the norm of society.
It's marginalized so many groups of people, a lot of them being on the outskirts of society. Obviously, at the less progressive time, this was racially motivated, and some of these effects still linger. I'd like to say, like, a lot of the issues now are socioeconomic. The system that's in place didn't allow people to climb vertically, in this capitalistic society we live in. So even if racial tensions, things like that, are alleviated, poverty is a crippling disease in America, and certain groups, because of history, have been inflicted more with it than others.
So are you saying that groups other than low-income African Americans have been affected by incarceration?
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, racial tendencies still linger, even though I don't think it's the main cause. With certain police policies we saw in some of our presentations, the treatment of different groups of people, even just on bar streets in Los Angeles, the police discrepancies in their handling of public, drinking, public intoxication, random searches, things like that. So certain effects are lingering, and yes, they are racist, but they're also socioeconomic, and that factor can't be ignored as well.
Great point.
And I know that you brought up, Jordan, the incarceration rate of Mexicans and blacks specifically, and kind of some historical background on how these groups were marginalized in the first place. Started with Mexican immigration. A lot were immigrating to do work in the United States. Los Angeles embraced this because they needed workers. They thought they were going to work and then go back to Mexico. That wasn't the case. They started families and they started settling in Los Angeles, and that created a system where they were targeted by the police and the criminal justice system because they didn't fit into the norm. The Los Angeles didn't want the Mexicans settling into their society.
Yeah. And I think a funny fact with the whole settler society thing is people don't realize how valuable the undocumented workers are for our economy. Alabama had a bill that was passed that made it illegal to hire undocumented workers, and they really cracked down on it. And the result of it is the entire like agricultural system in the state basically collapsed. Because these people, even though they're undocumented, they want to live in this country. They have an unbelievable work ethic, and they'll do jobs that a lot of people won't do normally. So really, with the whole American dream and everything like that, like these people represent a lot of what the American dream has to offer in our country.
To go on further with this topic, incarceration of the black population in Los Angeles particularly started in South Central, which formed kind of the 1920s. The reason for this is that blacks weren't given federal subsidies to buy houses, so that they were forced to buy low-income houses, which happened to be in South Central. And it became a place of vice, really. Gambling, saloons, prostitution, slumming. But for the most part, most of the white men in the suburbs were participating in these vice industries in South Central. And the blacks in South Central were being blamed for all these problems that South Central was causing. But it was really the white society that also was participating in these. And so that in turn resulted in a lot of police brutality. Police were spending a lot of time in South Central, and they just assumed that any person roaming the streets was a criminal. And so even if they weren't doing anything, they're minding their own business, police would come up, harass them, arrest them for pretty much no reason. And that really started the incarceration of blacks in Los Angeles particularly.
Okay.
And this corruption's been seen for, hundreds of years at this point, seen articles from the 1800s citing this. In particular, the murder of Sam Faulkner, where 2 LAPD officers got away with, lying, in a court of law, perjury, just completely immune from any repercussions, it seemed like, just setting a terrible precedent. And all these tensions between law enforcement and the community, they culminate in these major flash events. The Watts riots in 1965 were huge.
Yeah, exactly.
Destruction of a ton of property and things like that. Just people really fed up the system, had really just a cry of just wanting some help from the people who are supposed to be protecting them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, again in the 1990s, with Rodney King's police brutality, beaten to death, and it starts a whole other riot. The community is fed up because this is a serious issue in Los Angeles.
Exactly. And it's something that we still struggle with today.
Yeah.
I mean, you see videos of police brutality every single day on Facebook, on the news.
Yeah.
So, there's got to be a time where we're going to have to look into reforming some of our policies and really trying to solve these issues so that we don't have huge blow-ups like, the Watts Rebellion and other things like that.
And I think these instances, you mentioned Facebook, the mass media we have now today, where anyone can film crime, and this public exposure, I think, is great for really cracking down on the people violating their power and abusing the system. I think it's huge for the state of our nation and the penal system moving forward.
Right. I think we can all agree that injustices have been happening by our enforcement for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
But so what you guys are saying is that now it's just a little more able to be under a spotlight.
Yeah, it's just out in the island, someone lifted up the carpet and all the roaches scattered from underneath it away.
And it's not to say that every single police officer or anything is inherently bad. It's just now we have more accountability. So you're gonna have to own up for your actions if you do go a little bit over the top or things like that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have really brought a lot to the table today. Lots to the show for sure. LA's happy to have you. I'm certainly glad you guys came. So, do you guys have any last thoughts or comments you guys would like to end with?
The main thing we've seen throughout this class is that it's not a problem of the past, it's a lasting problem, and it's something that we need to address going towards the future. It's costing people money, it's costing people their livelihoods,
Right.
It's seriously hurting specific groups of people throughout history. One specific thing I'd love to touch on is the issue of the mental health care in America. I went to a trip to Twin Towers prison in Los Angeles.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I went in there and it's a prison, people were in there still doing courts, stuff like that. But there's some pretty hardened criminals in there, and then there are also some people who are pretty mentally ill. People might harm themselves, have serious psychological problems, and they're in the same facility with them. And the treatment of these people, rather than, rehabilitation has been a major theme, it seems more that they're just willing to keep them away, not really deal with them, and just pump as many psychiatric drugs into them at a
Sort
time.
of like animals.
Yeah, almost like animals in a cage. They're in a tiny cage. And just the treatment of these people. I see people my age and they're being treated like this. And mental health in general, it shouldn't be an incarceral. It's not a punishable thing.
Right.
It's a medical issue, and I'd just really like to see reformation of that area in particular.
Wow, that's incredibly important.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll have a few other things to add too. Just overall, we've seen a lot of minority groups, a lot of groups just in general be persecuted by the carceral system. We see that it's not racist, it's not targeting one person, but it does have this effect that it kind of targets the urban poor. People that live their life in the public eye a lot. So, for example, the Native Americans, the tramps, the immigrants, blacks in South Central, all those kind of groups, were lower class, urban poor. So, it's time that really we get educated. This class is a great way for people to, know the issues. And if we just spread education about this, hopefully one day we can reform or really solve this problem.
Thank you. The time is now. Alright guys, well that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for coming on. And keep it real, LA.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was a blast, Jordan.